were at the dinner last night are at odds over whether security at an event last night needs to change. Joining me now is Republican Congressman McCaul of Texas, who was at last night's dinner. Also, you chaired the Homeland Security Committee. Before I get to that, walk me through your perspective on how things went down.
Well, I was sitting at a table very close to the stage, head table. 3 gunshots went off. We weren't sure what's going to happen next. Secret Service immediately jumped into action and pulled the president off the stage. And then the Secret Service got up on the stage with their rifles pointed at us, actually. And then they were pulling cabinet members out. And then the Capitol Police came to the members of Congress and escorted us out in an emergency.
So you were escorted out?
Right, yeah.
Because some members were not.
Well, they did a good job with me. They tried to locate as many members as they could at the event, and then they put us in an emergency vehicle to get out of there. But, you don't know what's going to happen next, right? You don't know if it's going to escalate to an AR-15 situation or an explosive device, and fortunately it didn't.
You said that you heard 3 shots. So it was clear to you right from the beginning that it was gunfire?
100%.
Some other people weren't sure.
No, I knew, but I've been, in wartime situations. I mean, I knew that there were 3 shots fired, and it was surreal,
Have you spoken to the Trump administration? Anybody there since the shooting happened?
No, I have not. I have not.
And the whole idea of you all being whisked away, and obviously the president, the vice president, and members of his cabinet as well. It's interesting that you just said you weren't sure maybe there was an IED. I spoke this morning with Oz Perlman, who was slated to be the entertainment last night, and he said one of his first thoughts was a bomb is going to go off.
Correct.
No idea. Given that, what do you think of keeping everybody contained in the ballroom? I know it's fine to ask questions later, but in terms of the protocol for that kind of moment.
Yeah, a lot of times, and if you're dealing with a terrorist situation, you will have another event simultaneously. I think an evacuation would have been appropriate. We just didn't know if this situation was going to escalate. The thing that really takeaway I got was that the line of succession. You had the president and the vice president at the head table, both of them together, and the Speaker of the House. Had an explosive device gone off, you would have knocked out the president, vice president, speaker, the 3 in line of succession.
So are you saying they shouldn't be in public together?
Well, I think the Secret Service needs to reconsider having both the president and vice president together, at something like that. Chuck Grassley would be the president had they all been taken out.
And talk more about that, about what you think the Secret Service should look at, because, talking to Todd Blanche this morning, listening to the president himself last night, the argument was, understandably, we're the United States of America. We're not going to be cowed, and the top leaders of the U.S. cowed into changing our protocols of appearing together just because there are real threats out there. That's why we have law enforcement to protect us.
Well, the Secret Service did an extraordinary job, as did the Capitol Police. The only, as someone who's was a counterterrorism federal prosecutor and chairman of Homeland, the only thing I would critique would be the outer perimeter. You could walk into the hotel because it's an open hotel, but you could walk in without going through a magnetometer. That's something like when we go to the Munich Security Conference, for instance. There's always a magnetometer outside the hotel before you go in. Now, would that have stopped in this case? I don't know. I think, as I understand it, the suspect had checked into a hotel room where he could bring his weapons freely with him. And it's hard to prevent something like this.
Yeah, but if you're saying that if there were a magnetometer to screen people before they go into the hotel, he wouldn't have been able to get the guns.
Can't carry a weapon. No. Yeah, and they would have caught that. Now, I don't know if he checked in prior to that into his hotel room, but I think that's something that when you're doing it in an open environment like this hotel, For instance, you couldn't park, you had to park 6 blocks away. So I don't know why they couldn't have had screening as you enter into the hotel as well.
The Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche also told me this morning that last night's shooting should be a wake-up call to Congress to fund the Department of Homeland Security, which has been shut down for about 2 months now.
Yeah.
As you well remember, the Senate, in a bipartisan way, passed a bill to do just that. And your Speaker, Mike Johnson, didn't take it up.
I think it's time. I mean, I think shutdowns, I've never been a big fan of those. And typically my party gets blamed for them. I don't think they're productive. In this case, I predicted that something bad's going to happen and somebody's going to have blood on their hands. And it's very irresponsible. I think we need to pass that as soon as possible. I know the Speaker is working with Senator Thune on a reconciliation package. I would hope this is a wake-up call to get it done as soon as possible.
Real quick before we go, your colleague on the other side of the aisle, Jared Moskowitz, was just here, and he said that he thinks that Secret Service should be taken out of the Department of Homeland Security. Do you agree?
I mean, look, we talk about privatizing TSA, and I think...
Just put in another, because DHS is too big.
I think they function just fine within the Department of Homeland Security, and that is a function of the Department of Homeland, is to protect the president, and I think it's fine.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I really appreciate it.